The UN Secretary General addresses the United Nations General Assembly, focusing on terrorism and the plight of refugees around the world.
We are a world in pieces. We need to be a world at peace.
But the US president uses his address to once again threaten to destroy North Korea.
Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
Hello, welcome to TRT World, live from London. I'm Shuli Ghosh. Also ahead on the programme, Myanmar's Aung San Suu Kyi condemns human rights violations but stops short of criticising military action against the Rohingya. And hurricane warnings in place across the Caribbean over another potentially catastrophic Category 5 storm. The UN Secretary-General says those who seek to demonise and divide are to blame for the erosion of trust between countries. Addressing the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly, Antonio Guterres spoke of the grave challenges faced by the global community, including rising inequality, growing conflict and climate change.
We, the peoples, and the United Nations face grave challenges. Our world is in trouble. People are hurting and angry, and they see insecurity rising, inequality growing, conflict spreading, and climate change integrated. Societies are fragmented, political discourse is polarized, and trust within and among countries is being driven down by those who demonize and divide. We are a world in pieces. We need to be a world at peace.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump used his first address to the General Assembly at the United Nations to again threaten to destroy North Korea.
Now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience. But if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime.
In the next few hours, Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan will also be addressing the UN General Assembly. He's expected to talk about UN reform. Our correspondent Edis Tianshan has more from New York.
Arriving in New York for the UN General Assembly, one of the priorities for the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is reform. While his American counterpart preached UN reform at the institution's headquarters, President Erdogan was just across the road. He was taking a different view of the changes he feels are needed.
Our world is no longer the same world as it was at the time when the UN was founded. The Second World War is long past, and to plan a future with the 5 permanent members of that era is not a fair situation.
The UN reform is an issue that most likely be discussed in many assemblies to come, but there are other issues of immediate concern to be raised by the Turkish president.
Turkey is hosting over 3 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. So Turkey needs help more on this issue, and also peace processing. All different countries, United Nations members, have different agenda on Syria, so there is no common goal on this issue. So refugee issue and the peace process in Syria are the biggest two issues right now that President Erdogan will raise.
But ending the Syrian crisis will only be possible with strong international cooperation. The UN General Assembly is the only time when all of the world's leaders come together to set the world agenda. And the gathering of so many leaders also offers a unique opportunity for several side events and private one-on-one meetings. The US.
In line with Turkey's position, emphasizing its role as a strategic regional partner, so we do expect the bilateral relations to rekindle.
The General Assembly will be a chance for the international community to hear from the Turkish president, and he's not only interested in his country's relationship with the US, but also in shaking up some key decisions on global affairs. It is Tian Shan, TRT World, United Nations.
Kurdish authorities are showing no signs of bowing to intense international pressure to call off next week's referendum. Police were deployed on Monday evening in the northern Iraqi city of Kirkuk to prevent any violence. Kirkuk is possibly the most problematic region in the KRG's push for independence. Nicole Johnston is in Erbil in northern Iraq.
Both the Kurds and the Arabs have always claimed it as theirs. It's an ethnically rich city with Kurds, Arabs, Christians and Turkmen there. In the time under Saddam Hussein, he sent many Arabs into Kirkuk. Since then, a lot of them have left and Kurds have moved in. Under Iraq's constitution, there was meant to be a census carried out in Kirkuk to find out the makeup of the city of Kirkuk and many of the other disputed areas, followed by a referendum. The deadline for that referendum has passed. The Kurds are going ahead with one regardless. And the other very big issue that makes it so controversial is the fact that Kirkuk sits on 10% of Iraq's oil reserves. That makes it perhaps the greatest prize of all in Iraq. As everyone I've spoken to has said that they'll be voting yes. Having said that, there is a movement against it, a no movement, so to speak. It's based down in Sulaymaniyah, near the border with Iran. It's led by one of the main opposition groups, the Goran movement. But so far, that's the only opposition that I've seen in the disputed territories, areas like Bashika that used to be under the control of Baghdad and are now under the control of the Kurdish government. They say that they want to stay in the KRG. A lot of the reason for that is a long-held distrust between both sides. Kurds say that they can't trust Baghdad, that they can't trust the Arabs, that they have their own language, culture and identity, that they're already semi-independent anyway with their own parliament.
For all by bringing an end to poverty. This is because terrorism flourishes in a climate of poverty, and thus it's necessary for Africa to
and government system
infrastructures in order to ensure inclusive development. Mr. President, how can we remain silent confronted with the daily torment of the Palestinian people, victims of occupation? The African Union reiterates its
it would immediately conflict Iran
of Palestine in their legitimate struggle to reaffirm their
the US and Iran are also. Let's speak to Mesut Özkan, who's on the phone. He's director of the Diplomatic Academy of the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Good to have you with us, Mesut. First of all, can I just ask you about President Erdogan's upcoming speech at the United Nations later on today? What are you expecting him to cover in that?
We reaffirm our commitment to the total denuclearization of the peninsula in line with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Mr. President, the 21st century will undoubtedly be the century where Africans are going to count more and in a decisive way. There is an increasingly strong feeling among African leaders and young people that the time for renewal has come. African young people and women are determined to write a new page in the history of humanity. Let's give them this opportunity, or they'll take it themselves. Together, let us create the type of globalization which is more humane and more positive. Let us make our planet safer and let us conserve it. In order to do this, the 2030 Agenda, the Addis Ababa Action Plan, and the Paris Climate Agreement provide a reference framework for us. Let us strive to implement them effectively. I cannot finish without launching an urgent appeal to the international community for them to provide better assistance to Sierra Leone, affected by one of the worst natural disasters in its history. Once again, we would like to express our compassion and our solidarity to the people and government of this brotherly country. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Guinea for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State. Before proceeding further, I'd like to request that representatives make an effort to maintain silence in the General Assembly Hall in order not to interrupt the proceedings and out of courtesy to other delegations. I rely on those present to cooperate in maintaining order and quiet in the hall, in keeping with the dignity and decorum expected of members of the General Assembly. The Assembly will hear an address by Her Excellency Doris Leuthard, the President of the Swiss Confederation. I request protocol to escort Her Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations Her Excellency Doris Leuthard, the President of the Swiss Confederation, and to invite her to address the Assembly.
Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée Générale, Monsieur
President
le
of the General
Général,
Assembly,
Excellences,
Secretary
Mesdames
General,
et Messieurs,
Excellences, ladies
je
and
souhaite
gentlemen,
exprimer mes sincères
I would like to
condoléances
express
au
my
gouvernement
sincere
et aux
condolences to
citoyennes et
the
citoyens de la
government and
Dominique
peoples of
et pour les
Dominica
régions
and
des Caraïbes
to
qui
those
souffrent
of the
de la
regions of the
destruction
Caribbean
par
suffering
les
from the
ouragans.
destruction
La
caused
Suisse
by
va soutenir
hurricanes.
la
Switzerland
région.
is going to give support
Oui,
to the
depuis
region.
l'an 2000, l'humanité a
Yes.
fait des progrès remarquables
Certainly,
dans la lutte
since
contre
the year
ces
2000,
fléaux majeurs
humanity
que sont
has
la
made
faim,
remarkable progress in
l'extrême
fighting
pauvreté
these
et les
scourges
difficultés
such as
d'accès
hunger,
à
extreme
l'éducation.
poverty, and
Mais la
difficulty
famine
in
affecte
accessing
toujours
education.
800 millions de
But there
personnes dans le
are
monde
still
et toutes les 10
795 people
secondes,
suffering from
un
famine in
enfant
the
meurt
world.
de
Every 10
malnutrition.
seconds, a child
Sans
dies from
compter les
malnutrition,
autres défis à
without
relever,
counting the
les
other
changements
challenges
climatiques,
that have to be
les
addressed:
inégalités
climate change,
planétaires, les conflits, les
inequality
catastrophes
throughout the
humanitaires,
world,
mais aussi
conflicts
les
and
déplacements
disastrous
forcés et
humanitarian
les
disasters,
migrations.
and also forced
Aucun
displacement and
pays,
migration.
aucun acteur sur
No
la scène
country,
mondiale
no
n'est en mesure de
individual
trouver
is
seul
able
les
themselves
réponses
to
aux
find the
défis
answers
d'aujourd'hui.
to
Ils
today's
sont trop
challenges.
grands,
They're
ils
too
sont
big,
trop complexes,
they're too
ils
complex,
transcendent
and
les
they go
frontières.
beyond our
Ils
borders.
concernent
They
l'ensemble
relate
de
to
la
the
communauté
entire international
internationale.
community.
Nous avons donc besoin
We
d'un
therefore
forum
need
où nous
a
pouvons nous
forum
rencontrer.
where we're able
Nous
to
avons
meet
besoin d'un
together.
forum où
We
nous
need
pouvons
a
élaborer des
forum where we
solutions et
can
en
prepare
suivre la mise en
solutions
œuvre.
and then follow up
Nous
on the
avons besoin
implementation.
d'un acteur
We need
possédant la
a body
légitimité
that has the
nécessaire
necessary
pour
legitimacy
contribuer
to
à la mise en œuvre
contribute to the
de ces
implementation
solutions
of
sur
these
le
solutions
terrain.
on the ground.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to remind you on Article 1. The purpose of the UN are to maintain international peace and security, and to that end to take effective collective measures for the prevention and renewal of threats to the peace. Collective, not one alone. Because I am a patriot, And because I defend, as President of Switzerland, the interest of my country, we need a strong multilateral system. We need a strong United Nations. Autrement dit, mesdames, messieurs, nous avons besoin de l'ONU et nous avons besoin d'une ONU forte. Il faut encore le rappeler à l'heure actuelle, un signe qui doit nous alerter. Pour préserver et renforcer la capacité d'action de l'ONU, il faut poursuivre sans relâche l'effort d'investissement. Il assiste l'emploi activement. Les investissements dans les thématiques de France sont une priorité absolue. Il est important que nous placions au cœur des activités de l'ONU les thèmes qui auront, demain comme aujourd'hui, une importance fondamentale. À cet égard, les États membres de l'ONU ont posé d'importants jalons ces dernières années. Je pense naturellement à l'agenda 2030, à l'accord de Paris sur le climat ou à la volonté de transférer des ressources de la gestion post-conflict vers la prévention, afin d'intensifier les activités de pérennisation de la paix. Dans ces domaines, il s'agit de progresser vers les objectifs fixés. L'agenda 2030 offre, à cet égard, un bon exemple. Son succès se mesurera à l'aune de sa réalisation. Des mesures importantes ont également été prises au sein de l'ONU. La Suisse salue en particulier les réformes du système des Nations Unies que le secrétaire général Guterres s'emploie à mener à bien dans les trois domaines que sont la paix et la sécurité, le développement et la gestion. S'agissant de la paix et de la sécurité, la Suisse soutient la priorité que le secrétaire général accorde à la prévention. Et ce, pour une raison bien simple. Quand un conflit éclate, le prix à payer sur les plans humanitaires, économique et financier est bien plus élevé que les coûts des activités de prévention. Pour renforcer la prévention des conflits, il est essentiel de promouvoir les droits de l'homme. La Suisse invite tous les États à soutenir l'appel du 13 juin qui demande que les droits de l'homme soit au cœur de la prévention des conflits. L'accroissement des capacités de médiation constitue un autre moyen important de les prévenir. Par ailleurs, le panel mondial de haut niveau sur l'eau et la paix, lancé à l'initiative de la Suisse, a proposé hier ici à New York des mesures devant permettre de mieux prévenir les conflits liés à l'eau. L'ONU et les organisations régionales peuvent jouer un rôle majeur à cet égard. La Suisse s'engage activement en faveur de la non-prolifération et de l'élimination complète des armes nucléaires, dont l'utilisation aurait des conséquences catastrophiques sur le plan humanitaire. Elle est convaincue que seules des négociations et un processus diplomatique permettront de trouver une issue aux problèmes sécuritaires que pose la crise nucléaire dans la péninsule coréenne. La confiance, mesdames, messieurs, est un autre aspect important. Pour qu'un acteur puisse prendre des mesures de prévention efficaces, il a besoin qu'on lui fasse confiance. Pour l'ONU, ça signifie que la qualité du partenariat établi avec l'État hôte concerné et sa population est d'une importance primordiale. Or, l'exploitation sexuelle et les abus sexuels tissent ce lien de confiance. C'est pourquoi la Suisse soutient l'action menée par le secrétaire général contre toute forme d'abus sexuels et d'actes d'exploitation sexuelle commis par des membres du personnel de l'ONU en mission sur le terrain. Dans le cadre de son engagement sur cette question, la Suisse contribuera au Fonds des Nations Unies dédié à l'aide aux victimes d'exploitation
for the
et d'abus
victims
sexuels.
of sexual exploitation and abuse.
Concernant le système des Nations Unies
With
pour le
regard to the
développement,
United Nations
nous
Development
saluons la
System,
proposition
we welcome the
d'encourager
proposal to
davantage les
encourage
initiatives
more
communes
joint
des différentes
initiatives
entités
between the
de
various entities
l'organisation.
of the organization.
Permettez-moi d'évoquer à titre
Allow
d'exemple
me, by way of
deux
example,
domaines où
to
nous devons faire
mention
face
two
à de grands
areas
défis. C'est les
where we're facing
migrations
major
et
challenges,
la
migration
numérisation.
and the
Fin
digital era.
2016, le nombre de
At the end of
personnes
2016, the
déplacées à
number of
travers
people
le monde
displaced throughout
a
the
atteint un
world
niveau sans précédent
reached a
depuis
level
la
not
Seconde
seen
Guerre
since the Second
mondiale.
World War.
La majorité d'entre elles a
The
été
majority
déplacée
of
dans
them
son propre pays.
have been
En
displaced from
Europe,
their
par
own
exemple,
countries.
nous devons réussir,
In
en
Europe, for
matière de
example,
migration,
when it comes to
à trouver
migration,
une solution
we need to
qui
be
soit
able to find
fondée
a
sur la
solution that is
solidarité
based on
entre les pays
solidarity
et nous devons
between countries.
stabiliser la
And we have
situation
to
politique
stabilize
en
the
Libye.
political situation
La
in
Suisse
Libya.
s'emploie à ce que le pacte mondial
Switzerland
pour la migration
wants
porte
to ensure
non
that the
seulement
Global Pact
sur
for
les défis,
Migration
mais
not only
aussi sur
addresses
les
the challenges,
opportunités
but
de
also the
générer une
opportunities
migration
brought
au
about
niveau
by
international.
international migration.
Le chemin à parcourir
The
est encore
path
long.
ahead of
Il
us
est
is a
nécessaire
long one.
que tous les États participent à
It's
cette
important
action.
that, however,
Nous
that
sommes
all
heureux
countries do
de
their
pouvoir
part.
contribuer
We are
concrètement à
happy to be
son
able to
succès
specifically
grâce à
contribute
l'intervention
to
de
this
notre
success.
représentant.
Of America, and to invite him to address the Assembly.